And this is where I want to shift gears to and talk about news media, because I think, the news media has been willing to adopt this story kind of in two frames. One is elite, powerful men demonstrating the problems of patriarchy and sexism by abusing and trafficking women. I think that's an important story. It's well documented. Secondary story is, why does Trump so bothered by the fact we want to know more about his friendship with Epstein? So that kind of hyper partisan frame. Fox piles on and says, "What about the Democrats?" But I feel like there's this large story that I continue to see come out in the different documents, which is the ways in which Epstein is working on behalf of other governments, not just the U.S. government, but he talks about Jeffrey Epstein's brother talks about trading dirt that Jeffrey had to the Russian government, and then there's a lot of Jeffrey Epstein doing deals directly with the Israeli government in places like Mongolia. This has not been touched. The only time I've seen it brought up in legacy media is Marjorie Taylor Greene brought it up in an interview with Dana Bash, and Dana Bash immediately shut it down, asking Marjorie Taylor Greene, like, where'd you get the evidence to draw that conclusion? And Greene had just said from the emails, which Greene was correct, even broken clocks right twice a day. So I wonder.
I thought she demolished the CNN people. She made them look
Yeah.
dumb, even with her, her blonde hair and deep South accent. Doesn't come across necessarily well in American media. And I thought she still looked better than the silly CNN people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So what do you kind of make about that? How are they going to be able to keep up this kind of very careful balancing act of, we're all for the files, we want to talk about everything in the files, but these things that are clearly in the files we're not talking about?
Right. Oh, it's been remarkable. I mean, they interviewed that guy from the New Yorker, the kind of weird dude. I can't recall his name at the moment, but the guy who had exchanges with Epstein and knew regarding Trump and other things. He's this reporter.
Oh, Wolf?
Yeah, there you go. And
Okay.
they did not mention that. It was a half-hour interview, and it was very silly in terms of just not wanting to cover that aspect of it. And there is just a lot of evidence tying him to Israel. His friendship with Ehud Barak. It appears that one of the famous victims, Virginia Giuffre, she'd written about how a prime minister had violently raped her, and that seems to have been Ehud Barak. And Ari Ben Menashe, the same person that was the Mossad person who was talking about Epstein and Murdoch and Trump, right? He said that Ehud Barak was essentially blackmailed by Epstein sources, and that was part of why they were able to sabotage those peace talks in the late 1990s, which were and they were supposed to keep going even into the 2000s, but Israel just abandoned them and then blamed the Palestinians for it. Additionally, Epstein's partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, is the daughter of a notorious spy from Israel, or a spy for Israel. He was a British person, Robert Maxwell. And his initial fortunes came from connections to Wexner, who is a person who was a part of this elite sort of Mossad-connected Israeli, American Zionist oligarch group, like that had people like, I think Adelson, maybe Bronfman was a part of it, Lester Crown, and Wexner. Of course, Steven Spielberg was even a part of this group. It was called the Mega Group, right? And so there's the connections with Epstein are quite obvious, that he was, working on behalf. He had some connection to Zionism and to Israeli intelligence, but also with the sanction of the CIA and U.S. intelligence. And this is why Acosta in, I think it was 2016 or 2017 maybe, when he was going through confirmation hearings to be like an assistant cabinet minister, or maybe a cabinet, maybe a head cabinet officer, but secretary. But he had said, well, I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. He was too big a fish. So that's a pretty unambiguous statement that he's protected by intelligence. And that explains the sweetheart deal. I believe that the CIA was working with Mossad, and that the CIA outsources some of its black operations to Israel, which is a part of why they have so much control over the United States, that they do dirt for the U.S. and they handle things so that the U.S. can say they don't handle it. I also think that this connects to things like the Israeli exposure of JFK things, like an Israeli intelligence agent was the executive producer for Oliver Stone's JFK, for example, which is a pretty mind-blowing thing. And I love the movie, and I think it's one of the most important American films ever made. But why are super pro-Israel people behind some of the financing? And I believe it had to do with the fact that H.W. Bush was actually in favor of a Palestinian state. Because in 1989, his Secretary of State said it explicitly. He said, it's time to put aside once and for all talk about a greater Israel. We need to have a Palestinian state, right? And then he loses the next election. H.W. Bush does. Very, very strange thing. So I believe that Israel has used the media and investigations of some of these institutions in order to put them under the spotlight and then put pressure on the U.S. to essentially blackmail the U.S. into giving them responsibility for some of the blackest black bag jobs. For example, when they wanted to assassinate Assange and they wanted to surveil him illegally at the Ecuadorian embassy, the group that they hired to do this is the UC Global, I believe, is the outfit's name, but it's really the security arm of the Sands Casino, which is owned by Sheldon Adelson, the biggest donor to the Republican Party, biggest donor to Trump's campaign. And also, the Sands Casino is literally a Lansky joint. It was established in Vegas. It was owned by Meyer Lansky, and then now it operates out of Macau and brings in billions there. Probably, I would guess, still laundering drug money and then just declaring it casino earnings because it's the most lucrative and it's the most lucrative source of hot money that you can launder because it's not reported in a systematic way. It's easy to go in and gamble, and people don't want to declare these losses and so on. So I think it's quite possible that a lot of that money is related to illegal criminal activity on an international scale. And so they wanted to assassinate Assange. They don't have the CIA do it. The CIA director, Mike Pompeo, tasks Adelson, tasks a literal Lansky joint run by a super Zionist to kill Assange. So it's very, very strange and disturbing, and it goes totally against the way that we're told the U.S. is supposed to work. It's supposed to be run by laws, et cetera, et cetera. And for at least the officials are pro-American, right? Except oftentimes they're very loyal to international political entities.